Hi, welcome back. This is going to be my February reads. I think I read like another 20 something books, did a couple DNFs, which I will add to this list at some point. Probably at the end, just to like say what I DNF'd. I'm going to just get right into it because I know the last video was like 20 something minutes. I will try and cut that down. And I guess I'll start on my list with What Moves the Dead. I actually read both in that series. I think she might be writing another. But the first was What Moves the Dead. I overall liked both this one and the next I'll talk about. Overall, it's not like a bad story. I think she's kind of doing like a House of Usher, kind of like retelling, like loosely based. I think a lot of her stories are like loosely based on other like fairy tales or like things like that, or like older stuff. It was interesting, but my thing is, What Moves the Dead was slow starting, and then it kind of drifted. So I'm kind of like, okay, what is going on? And mind you, if you look at that book, it's like this. It's very small. It's small. So when you're starting out slow and then you drift, you're kind of like, okay, when something happens. But then when it does happen, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I like this, because it does have things for me that I really enjoy, like fungus work and like some dissection scenes, things like so. For me to like stick to it, I liked it. So for me, despite the slow start, it was worth the read just for that, and it was worth me wanting to go into the sequel. I did listen to the audiobook, so I guess it was beneficial for me for like an audiobook listener. I don't know if I sat down and was like reading it, if I would have pushed through as much, but that's also like for me, like personally. Also there was like a ton of like hares, like bunnies. So anything with rabbits, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's me. I did go ahead and also read What Feasts at Night. I gave that like a little bit of like a lower score because I didn't feel like it, like, for something that was already like a slow pace to begin with, it kind of did the same thing. Like it was kind of like also like slow as well. It was like more slow throughout. I also thought it was funny, like in the second book wants you to know these men hunt. You are going to know, like, these guys, they're hunting. They're going to be hunting this whole book. That is what they're doing. And it was almost kind of comical for me how it, like, continues. It's like, we're hunting. We're going to be hunting. By the way, we're hunting. And it's like, okay. Again, small book. We're hunting. Okay. I still like how this one, it implements, again, there's, like, science for, like a way back then kind of fantasy thing. But also they add in like superstitious elements in the second one. I like that. There is a scene, with a horse, that was very like kind of gruesome and things like that. But I personally like that. But I know other people don't like gruesome scenes with like animals in general. So just like a warning for people like that do not like that thing. Just beware. Just as a warning. I'm sure you can look through like other reviews too. Other people would like warn you like, oh, pass if you don't like anything to do with like animals and gruesome mixed together. I also read my first Darcy Coates. I have a couple of other Darcy Coates books on my shelf, but I just happened to see a shorter, it's probably like a short story versus like a novel, but it was an audiobook that was available, and I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to it to finally hear something that she has wrote. It was not bad for like a first try of something. It was a haunted house story. I really like haunted house ghosts in general. That's like kind of one of my preferences, and like horror is that kind of thing. I feel like it should have stopped before it went into, I think, what you would consider like a third act element. I think what she was trying to make is like that extra twist, if you want to call it, was not so much a twist as just like, okay, we get it. That's really not working for my vibes in it. And then, so you spend like quite a lengthy amount of time worrying over their, I guess like, oh, we're like in a bubble of like confusion, so to speak, because of the ghost. And then when one of the characters like pop out of that confusion, then it finally picks up into the actual conclusion. And I just feel like that whole like problem was unnecessary and was kind of boring. But otherwise it was like actually pretty good and interesting. I like that. I overall enjoyed the whole story. Going through here, the next was another like horror story with this time, these are ones where I did audio, but this one I had the book. Read this. Bring it up close for you. It's 12 Nights at Rotterhouse. Read it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I've had it for a while because I think it's a cool cover, and I'm one of those people. Sorry. I will see a cover that I like and I'm like, I gotta buy it. So I did. And I've had it on my shelf for a while. And I was finally like, this is kind of like my year of, okay, if I've had it for a while, I need to read it and actually stop buying new stuff because the old stuff is going to just keep sitting. So that's what I've been trying to go through, because you can kind of see if I have a lot of stuff that needs to be read before I keep buying. And there's more even, well, which way do I direct? Yeah, this way. More that way that I also need to read. I have like a lot of bookshelves. I have like a lot to read, so there's a lot of like new stuff coming and I really want to read it. And I also have a lot of old stuff that I really need to read it. So that was one of the books. I did not like it. Not only was it tedious to read, there were elements of it that were problematic for me. And I saw I'm someone who after I read, I like to be nosy and go through other people's reviews, and other people were also agreeing with my feelings that there were problematic issues, and the character, especially the main character, was just so unlikable, and I have read books where like, oh, unlikable character, but that's like the point, and it works well. This was just an unlikable character. It was, the problem itself was so, I didn't like it. I don't like when it built up to like, oh, this is the problem. This is what happened. This is the twist. And it was, you leave at the very end when you're like, okay, book closed. How do you feel? And it was like, ew. And not like cause like in horror, you're like, you can like close a book and you're like, ew. But then you're like, but that was still like a book. No. This leaves you like with the ew, and you're like, that was just bad. Like, why did that get published? That's how I felt. I did not like it. And the ending I feel like they tried to do like a shock value. It wasn't shock. It was just meh. And I didn't like it. And repetitive. That was like the thing too, is the whole point is like 12 nights. There was supposed to be like a 13th, I think, or something like to that effect. They only make it like to 12. But like most of the nights are just, boys being boys and talking and like, shut up. Like I don't like, I have noticed I don't like that where it's like it's like, shut up, get to the point. So didn't like that. I also read something called The Exorcism Files. And again, just like the last one, the ones where I don't have the physical, you will see me put it somewhere, little pictures. I'm writing a book where like exorcisms and certain like things like that, I kind of want more knowledge on so that I can properly like have information on it. So the way this book kind of explained in the summary what it would be talking about, I was like, oh, that might be useful to listen to. It was only like 3 hours, like the audiobook. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen to it. It read like the whole book differently than what the summary was. It kind of like put down other religions. It put down other people. It put down women. Just overall, it was not just straightforward talking about exorcisms. It was just kind of useless as a book. And I was like, okay, this is pointless. It wasn't worth my time. It wasn't, in my opinion, really useful. I even looked up the author of the book and I was like, backtracks. Like at the end of it, I was kind of like, okay, I should have looked up what this was before I actually got it. I personally wouldn't have read it if I'd like Googled who this person was. I kind of fell into the, if you have Libby, you would probably understand. Like you do like the late night Libby, you're like, oh, it's available. Click, listen. That's what I did. Shouldn't have done that. That is definitely one of the stories where I shouldn't have done the whole like, oh, ×2, listen now. Nope, shouldn't have done that. I have this book. I finally read the second one. I read the first, Divine Rivals. Yeah, I read the first last year. I thought for me, this is very YA coded. I don't know if it's categorized YA, but this is very YA coded, both books. But some YA books I don't enjoy. I'm also in my 30s. That's probably why. But I know other people like my age really like it. So like, to each their own. It's just for me personally. But a lot of people were saying like, oh, you need to read it. So I was like, okay. And I got this at a really cute store, like an hour or so away from me, that does like secondhand. And they had both. They had this one and the first one. I've got it on my shelf somewhere. So I was like, oh, I'm going to get it. Support like local business, things like that. I got both. And they sat on my shelf for a while. And then last year, I think like in like October, November, I picked up the first. I picked up the first and I read it. I thought the first was actually a very interesting. I liked the story. I really did. I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I liked the way they handled like war. I liked the way they handle just like a lot of different like elements of it. And I really thought it was cute. Just like the like typewriter thing and stuff like that. So I finally picked up like this one this month because I was like, I like don't do well with like memory for a long time. That's why while I'm doing these videos, you will see like I have a notebook in my lap to kind of like remember like how I felt about it a little bit. But like I did this one, and my issue is I thought the first one was really good. I personally feel instead of making that a duology, that could have been so heavily edited into a really tight, really good standalone. I feel like when I was reading that second book, and like the recall, like how I recalled, like kind of like that last 30% maybe of the first one, I feel like a lot of editing could be done to have made that a really good, really tight, just standalone. Sorry, there's like a car going by. It's really loud. I don't know if you can hear that. But yeah, I feel like that could have been a really good standalone, really tight, and I would have probably bumped it to a 5-star, like a really good 5-star. As a duology, no. I felt really bored with the second book. A lot of the time, a lot of the reading of the second book, I was kind of like, I'm really bored. I really don't care. Is this almost done? I also feel like too, maybe I should stop waiting so long between sequels, because one of my issues too was I'm reading like a few of the first, like probably like 5-10 pages. And I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? What's going on even? And I was like, ugh. But yeah, like definitely the first one, I really did enjoy. The second one, I just feel like by the time I was done, I closed, I was like, I want to keep it and maybe like reread it maybe in like a couple of years, like let it kind of filter out of my brain, reread it, and then maybe read them back to back and see how I refeel. But like right now, it's just, I feel like there was so many like pointless parts to it where it was just like, this could have been like a really, really tight standalone, and I was not big on it as like a duology. Also, the brother, why was that even a character? I'm gonna be honest. I did read Lute. I kept going back and forth on it for a while because I was like, it kind of sounds interesting, kind of doesn't. Keep going back and forth, and again, I got sucked into that. Oh, well, it's my brain. I have like this little thing in my brain where it's like, well, it's on Libby, it's available, go for it. And I did, which I didn't. I will say that book, if you are a reader who is just like all atmosphere, all vibes, that is your thing, give it a try. Like legitimately give it a try. But like I felt like the entire time I was listening to to Lute. My brain, I'm tired. I felt like the entire time I was listening to Lute, I was like, about to DNF this. I'm about to DNF this. There was no plot. I felt like every like 20, 30 minutes that passed. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, things would happen. I'm not saying like things weren't happening, things weren't going on, but I was like, the character is just going on and on and on and on and on. And I'm just like, shut up and please do something of interest. And then like when the book is over, it's like the plot is dull, the characters are dull. There is actually like no stakes. That like for a story where like, you know, is involved, where's the stakes? Like legitimately. And then even when like is involved, I'm kind of like, I don't care. I really don't. And I was just like, that was me like the whole time. I was like, I'm completely done. So when it was done, I was like, yes. I rated that like super low. I felt bad. I was like, I rated that so low. And then like I realized actually today I was listening to a book while I was like taking a shower and like washing my hair and stuff. I was listening to a book and then like I went to pause it to get dressed and like actually start filming this. And I looked at the author and I was like, that's the same author of Lute. So I have like high hopes for the book I'm currently reading, but when I realized that's like the author of Lute, I was like, oh no, please, because this is, it's how do you pronounce it? Hold on. I have the pronunciation wrote down. Give me a minute. I have a dog currently licking my notebook, so give me a minute. It's the, Diavola. There we go. Sorry. I had to write down the pronunciation because like multiple people were like pronouncing it like multiple different ways. So I was like, I got to write down. But the Diavola book, that's who wrote Lute. And so I was getting into Diavola and I was like, okay, I'm liking this. I'm liking this. So I'm like, fingers crossed that this author like does like a book where I'm like, yes, I like this. I just didn't like Lute. So, the next book that I read is My Darling Dreadful Thing. Again, a crime to have this gorgeous of a cover. Do you see this cover? This is a crime to have this beautiful cover and have a story that boring. It wants to be, the problem is that story wants to be Crimson Peak so bad. And Crimson Peak is like a vibe. It's like a decent movie. Like, I'm not saying it's not, but that book wants to be Crimson Peak and it fails bad, so bad. And like, again, I feel like this, like February was like a really bad month for me of like reading books that want to rely on atmosphere and vibes, but not the plot or like stakes or characters even. And I'm just like, a book has to have like a good mix of these things at least, or it at least for me, it falls flat really bad. My hair is in my way. I'm sorry if you see me throwing it back. But yeah, for me personally, because I bought that book like late last year, I think. And I was like, oh, I love that. And I read the summary. I was like, oh, it sounds really good. And I was finally like, oh, I'm going to read it. And it was such a letdown for me because I was like, oh, I really wanted that to be good. And now I'm going to be probably donating it to the library, but oh well. The next book, wherever I put it, that I listened to was Accidentally Amy. I will say, I, first of all, did not like it. And another book actually coming up that I want to talk about too, as well. Because this had an issue as well this month, and I'm kind of upset about this, and I'm going to say it now. I'm going to start doing more research on authors because I'm getting so annoyed, at like, oh, okay, I'm reading a book and then like problematic issues pop up, and I'm like, wouldn't have put money into that or time if I'd known that. But apparently the author of Accidentally Amy has some problematic issues. I did not know that until like a week ago, but I'd already read this like a couple weeks ago. So, but, regardless of that, I still didn't like the book. The tone, now I listened to it. The audiobook tone was very, millennial juvenile for me. And I'm a millennial, so like I can roast that if I want, but it had that like millennial tone where it was like too many pop culture references in the book, first of all. And like, I just did not vibe with that. Also, I cannot vibe with two insufferable love interests who were just constantly being obnoxious. That just drove me nuts during the book. And like, I kept like, while I was reading it, I was like, this will get better. Like, the cringe will stop, right? Like, they'll fall in love and it'll stop being uncomfortable. No, it was so bad. And I was just like, I can't. Yeah. And then, like I said, I will probably, it's not probably, I won't read from this author again because I found out about problematic issues, and that's just like a personal thing for me. And the same thing happened with another author. I found out after reading, so I actually had 2 books from this author. I read one and then took the second off the shelf because I found out about problematic issues, but it was this book. I read this book, took the other off the shelf, but again, I won't read anything from that one again because of the problematic issues I found out. Again, personal interest. I'm not coming for anybody's throat with that. It's just, that is for me. But I will say for that book, I also did not, my issue with that book is, you see this? Okay. I think that's like, I'm going to open it. I'm going to double check. I don't want to lie. It's over 500 pages. I didn't give it, I saw like 500 towards the end, like 570 something. I don't know the exact, but it's like over 500 pages. My issue is, and maybe I'm simple, but if I'm reading romance, I want like a romance novel, right? I feel like a lot of people feel that way. That's just me though. I feel like any form of romance was over halfway through that 500 plus page book. And even then, it was more like flirtations. Nothing really happened throughout the bulk of that book. And so a lot of it is just you listening to the main character's like inner thoughts. And I was very bored. And for a book that long, bored. And then there was also like weird commentary on an underage son. And it was just kind of sprinkled in like a couple of times. But I was just kind of like, can we not do that? I don't care. It's kind of weird. Just a random commentary. Yeah, there's slow burn and then there's that. And it was not a thing for me. So yeah, we've got the problematic part of this out of the way. That was just me. And then I'm going to continue with something I really liked. And it's a little different from a book, but I'm still going to include it. It's a comic. Legacy of Vader. Yes, it's Kylo Ren. If you follow anything, probably like Blue Sky or something of mine, and my TikTok, you will see that I have a like thing for that. So when Legacy of Vader came out, yeah, I got it. And yeah, I read it. And yeah, it's good. I like Star Wars. I'm going to get that. It's just a thing. I'm not moving my camera setup right now. I might one day do like a room tour of my office, but the other side of what you're seeing, I have like a whole wall of nothing but like Star Wars. I have like a lightsaber that I built in, it's ridiculous. But, yeah, I liked it. If you like Star Wars, if that's like your thing too, stuff like that, it's a nice addition. It really is. It's, it just kind of like follows, if you've watched the sequels, it's a nice little addition. Oh my God. The Atlas 6. I thought it was, I will say this, I thought it was so funny that literally directly after I read Atlas 6, I saw like, while scrolling TikTok, like 3 different TikToks being like, did anybody else not like Atlas 6? And I was like, great, I have curated my TikTok perfectly, because I did not like it. I did not enjoy it. Which again, I know a lot of people like the academia, dark academia stuff. I cannot get into it. I've tried a couple other books with it, I couldn't do it. But so many people were hyping the Atlas 6, and I was like, I'm going to try it. I really want to try and find a few dark academia books that maybe I could potentially really get into. This one was not it, to the point where I don't think, despite it being, I think it's a trilogy. I think there was only the 3. I don't know if I can continue. And if I did, I would have to probably have like a good amount of space between right now when I read this book. in February versus like the next two, because I was so bored and the characters were so annoying. It just, yeah, it just, and I saw another reviewer say this and I was like, this is literally it. Do you know the TikTok like sound bit, like the joke meme thing where they're like, it insists upon itself? That's the Atlas 6 is literally, it just insists upon itself the entire time. And the entire time I was listening to it, I was just like, is this done yet? So I really don't know if I can do any more of it. I keep trying to I'm trying to do more nonfiction, poetry, and classics. I don't know if I will be able to do it every single month. I would like to, but I am trying to make sure that I do it. So one of my classics that I did get this month was Notes from Underground. First of all, one of the quotes that like really hit me was, "What is man without desires, wantings?" And that out of the whole book was just, for me, I really liked that. And then like one of the things I wrote down, maybe it's just because it's me and like, you know, oh no, men, and like the character like follows the guy, but it's like, oh no, actions have consequences, you know? Yeah. But also like felt. And then also like too, for anyone who's read like that book or anything from the author, it was depressing. Like it is a depressing book, but also like I'm depressed, so it hits. I think after reading that, and I think that is one of his shorter stories compared to most. I think after reading that, I definitely would be interested in reading more of his work. It was certainly, compared to other classics that I've read, a better, more interesting thing. And then, oh my gosh, yes. I think more than like, so I definitely had two for sure favorite reads, I think, but I think they're tied. Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think my favorite is like, no, they're tied. One of them is The Eyes Are the Best Part, wherever it gets put up. Oh my gosh, I don't own it. I listen to it as an audio. I'm buying that. Like, next time I go to a bookstore, I'm buying it. The storytelling style was amazing. I have, like, a really big, like, eye fear. Like, I don't like anything to do with eyes, and yet this book, as a horror novel, used a lot of excessiveness of it, and I was like, the whole time, like, terrified and horrified, and yet just like, yes, I love this book. The way it wrapped up, the twist of, like, if you listen to a single one of my recs this entire time you ever watch any of my, like, videos, TikToks, my post, like, whatever you ever listen to, read this book. This is the book to read. I believe this is also the author's first book. And I'm like, all right, anything she writes, I'm buying. If this is your first, I'm buying everything you write. Thank you. That was the hands down. I devoured it immediately, and I will, yeah, right? He's back there. I will literally devour anything she writes, hands down. Sorry, I'm passing up another DNF. I'm doing that at the end. Again, the next one. Perfect. This is who ties for the best of the month. Ironwood. They are hands down probably one of my favorite authors right now. This author right here, and again, this is put in the YA section. I don't know why, personally. I mean, I understand, because they even have a TikTok explaining like why they kind of got put in the YA and things like that. But I will say, I don't care that it's in YA. It does not read YA. It doesn't have elements of YA. That is hands down one of the best books. And I know I said in my January, that is already one of the best books too. It was amazing. I already have Heavenly Tyrant about to, I think, come in on my Libby's hold. I think it's about to pop where I can listen to it because I want to listen. I actually read and listened at the same. Listen, I wanted to do both. Leave me alone. But I don't own Heavenly Tyrant yet. I haven't gone to a bookstore, but I plan to not only buy Heavenly Tyrant, I'm also going to listen to Heavenly Tyrant. And I'm very, very, very excited. I have like a big special interest in like monsters, but like large forms. So like Godzilla, kaijus, like all that kind of like Pacific Rim. I watch that all the time. It's kind of embarrassing. Godzilla movies all the time, King Kong, like all that stuff. So like this scratches an itch for me that I love, and I'm so ready for their next book for me. I loved it, and I'm so ready for Heavenly Tyrant. Please read that too. Amazing. It's amazing. Oh my goodness. Read that too. Do it now. Thank you. Again, another one. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. I'm going to probably out myself right now as someone who is in the minority. I am not a Bridgerton person at all. A lot of like Regency romancy stuff does not hit for me, but I was still like, okay, I love like the sapphic romancing things that I want to try. It did not hit. I was zoning out. It read extremely YA. I feel like it just, there, again, no plot. Like whatever the plot was, I felt like it was flip-flopping on it. Like I think it was trying to be The Parent Trap, like a retake on The Parent Trap, and then just kind of like, is it? And then at the end it was like, yeah, no. Next one. Again, I love the cover. It's so pretty. And I was like, I want to get it. And I got it. The only issue is it was YA. But like I said, my thing is, I am trying. It's a romance, but I know one of my weaknesses is YA, because there's a certain way YA is written that just doesn't hit for me. The same way like romance is written a certain way that doesn't always hit for me. So I'm trying this year to not only get through a lot of books, but also just like open and broaden myself. And I was like, YA and romance, we're going to read it. It was very YA. I was not the target audience for that book. That is not the book's fault. My issue personally with that book was the way cheating was handled. I did not like that, like at all. It just, that really like meh for me. I didn't like, it's not like heavily in the book. It's like part of the like parents problem, but just the way that like the book tries to like represent that and handle it, I'm like, not for me. Thank you, but no. Yeah, that was my personal opinion. I also read, where did I put it? Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. That was a wonderfully written book. I listened to the audiobook and it was beautifully read and just a very insightful, good book. It's a perfect read for someone, wanting to maybe start their journey on like anti-racism, things like that. I personally very much enjoyed it. Like the listening, because I've now read like other books too on that topic, and that is definitely a book to have in that space. It was very, very good. And then next book, I have this one, Blackout. This was also a YA coded book. I think it's also in the YA genre, but it was YA coded. But despite being YA coded in the writing, I will say it was overall very cute. It is, so there's like, basically the way it works, because I don't know if you saw, there are multiple authors. Okay, you see them. And the multiple authors make it where there is one overarching story. So you get like multiple like little like snippets of a whole story, and between each snippet is a short story between. I thought they were cute. The thing is though, some of them I was like, okay. But then 3 of them, I was like, okay, I really like this. So like, it was kind of like a hit or miss scenario, which that usually happens with like most like short stories. But overall, I thought it was like a cute little thing. And then if you look on the back, let me turn around. If you look on the back here at the bottom, they have a whiteout. And I do think when I go to the bookstore, I'm going to look for the whiteout option because I do like the way that that one was wrote. And if I'm assuming it's going to be like the same thing, except like with like a snowed in option. And I think that would be really cute. So I do think I want to do that. The next book that I read was Ring Shout. Read Ring Shout. That was, again, I really like monsters, things like that. Ring Shout was so good in how they portray, like a quote, like you know what they've made into a monster. I'm not sure how far to, especially in today's climate and on YouTube, what exact verbiage I can say. But if you look up Ring Shout, you know what they have created into a monster, like a real monster. That's literally in the book. The way that the book creates monsters out of that, and the way the characters fight and battle those monsters is not only amazing imagery, and the way that the ending goes about it, first of all, it's devastating, but it is really good. It's a really good book overall. The only gripe I had is at one point in the book, a certain loss does happen, and I did feel like the author could have maybe made you feel a little bit more attached. But overall, that was like a really good horror novel. I really liked that one. I then also read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. That was such a goofy book. It was a silly, silly, silly romance. It's so funny. But I had so many gripes. Like, for one, I'm not a big Insta-love. It was very Insta-love, but I know a lot of people like that. So, But for me, Insta-love, I don't like it. I also, again, this is all preference. This is like a fantasy setting. But modern phrases and verbiage were used often in the book, despite it being a fantasy setting. Like, that kept drawing me out. But like, I know this wasn't meant to be like high fantasy, so I kept trying to like focus, but it just like, it was throwing me off to be like, hey, yo, we're gonna like do this. So like fantasy element, but then like things I would say in today's society. So that kept throwing me out of the book, just for me. But I also see like a lot of people really, really like that book. So obviously that's just like a personal thing, a personal preference. Sorry, I'm trying to not lose my place because I do have like the DNFs after all this that I don't want to miss. I did read poetry too this month. Milk and Honey. No shade, but I am too old for that book. Probably more shade to me. I am way too old for that book of poetry. Sorry. I feel like potentially maybe like 18 to 21-year-old me might have ate that up and thought that was like peak poems at some point, but nah, not now. Like that no. I do have another book of poems from that, writer. But right now, I have no interest in like picking it up right now. I did not enjoy that. It was incredibly juvenile writing. Just for me personally. I then also read I'll Be Waiting. I was a sucker for a very pretty, very, very pretty cover. And it was interesting. Again, like, kind of like a haunted house sort of situation. Like you're in a house that's sort of like having like spooky things happen during like a seance sort of situation. I get very tired as someone who does like horror. I get very tired when they categorize horror books and it's just a thriller. And that's what happened. It was just a thriller, basically like a whodunit sort of situation, basically. And they kind of, at the end, added like a ghost element to it. But it was basically wrote like a thriller. It had all the elements of a thriller. I don't enjoy that. So I did not enjoy it. And then also, like, at one point, for like a good chunk of the book, despite like these people being like very much adults, could not stop making some of the worst decisions I have ever read on paper. And I was like, I don't know why we're doing this, but all right. And it made it not an enjoyable book for quite some time. And yeah, I did not like it for me. But now I'm going to go through the DNFs, because that was everything that I read for February. So the DNFs for February was Our Winter Monster. The idea was really cool, but I, for the life of me, could not get invested in that story. I think I DNF'd it like almost 40%. So I gave it like a good try, but I caught myself constantly just being like, I don't know what's happening because I'm not paying attention. I was bored, and I was finally like, I'm not wasting more time on this. I did not like it. I didn't like the writing style. I was over it. This is going to be a very petty reason. I don't care. At dark, I become loathsome. I DNF'd that puppy at like 11%, I think. I cannot count how many times this author... I'm not joking when I say, I cannot count how many times they repeated the literal phrase, which is the title of the book, at dark, I become loathsome, in the book. And again, it was an audiobook, so maybe I just noticed it more because it was being like, spoken. But you're listening to the book, and then you hear like paragraph of words, and then at dark, I become loathsome. Another like paragraph or so. At dark, I become loathsome. Another paragraph or so. At dark. It was comical for me. Like, I could not focus on the story because I was like nearly cackling how silly it was. I can't focus on this. This is silly. So yeah, DNF. I know like some people were like really into the book, but I literally could not get past that. I was not going to be able to focus. Tell Me I'm Worthless. I got, I think, literally 50% in, and then a certain scene. Mind you, this is a very triggering book to begin with. Like, already a very triggering book, has very heavy topics already. At the 50% mark, I had to pause. I was actually going to D&D, so I had to pause anyway. And then, like, literally, I spent all of D&D thinking about it. I spent the rest of the evening, I couldn't even, like, restart, like, where I was at. Spent the rest of the evening thinking about it, and by the next day, I was like, actually, I feel like this needs to be a DNF for me. It's a very aggressive story. I'm sure other people have enjoyed it. It's a very mixed reviewed book. But for me personally, I did have to DNF it. There was already a lot of aggressiveness, and then a specific scene did finally that was that for me. And then the last DNF, which is probably going to hit a few people, because I know some people really, really love these books and this author. I DNF'd this. I did. I cannot get behind this. I can't. I could not handle that scene. And I know a lot of people know what I'm talking about in the beginning scene, because I literally can't say it on here. And no, I will not take the excuse of, well, the author edited it in this edition. Because I was listening to it. Like, I was listening, following along, because I have this. But I just happen to have it on Hoopla for the audio. Because a lot of times I do that. I'll listen while playing a game, even if I have the book, and then I'll just go back and forth. they're two separate. The audiobook was not the special edition. And what was edited is it's barely any different. I went a little bit further, and the meeting between the love interests and the scene between them as well also just does not vibe for me either. Now, again, I know that there's like a whole genre of that, and that's a vibe for those people. It does not vibe for me, which is tragic because Monster Lover is a thing that I can also enjoy in other places. But yeah, I need the internet to stop bamboozling me with certain books, because I'm tired of cracking open books and then immediately getting triggered. It's driving me up the wall. But those were the books I read. Those were my DNFs. And I think March is going to have to be a lot shorter because this is a long video too for how many books I read. But thank you for watching. And if you like it, please subscribe. Maybe like it, share it, whatever you want to do. But if not, I appreciate you at least watching. Thank you.